The members will be seated so that we may take attendance. Is this supposed to be, but we haven't told them to The members will be seated so that we may take attendance from the monitors. Thank you. Hi, Mike. Precinct 1. The members shall be seated and be silent so that we may take attendance. Thank you. Precinct 1. Okay. Precinct 1 reports 8 present, 16 absent. Precinct 2. Precinct 1, 9 present, 15 absent. Precinct 2. Okay, Precinct 3. Precinct 3 reports 9 present, 9 absent. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 reports 8 present, 8 absent. Precinct 2. Still working? Okay. Precinct 5.
14 present, 10 absent.
Precinct 5 reports 14 present, 10 absent. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 reports 16 present, 7 absent. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 reports 17 present, 9 absent. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 reports 10 present, 14 absent. At large.
17 present, 8 absent.
At large, 17 present, 8 absent. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 reports 14 present, 10 absent, and remote we have 1 present, 1 absent. So we have 114, 90. Okay. 114 members being present, 90 absent. A quorum is 103 members. We do have a quorum, so the meeting will now come to order. Will the monitors please bring up their first attendance list or sheet to the town clerk? Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yep, everything.
Yep, okay. All right, you got it. Okay, all right. All those who so desire may now rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Town Clerk Amy Hennessy Neves will now swear in newly elected and at-large members.
Because of our last election in April, all town meeting members were re-elected or newly elected. So if I could have everyone raise their right hands for me, I'm going to swear you all in for tonight's meeting. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as town meeting members in accordance with the bylaws of the town of Milford and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Neves will now read the opening of the warrant.
Good evening. This is the annual town meeting, May 22nd, 2023, Milford, Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Worcester County. To either constable of the town of Milford in said county, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth aforesaid, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Milford, qualified by law to vote in town affairs, to meet in the upper hall of the Milford Town Hall, 52 Main Street on the 22nd day of May, 2023 AD at 7:00 p.m. The annual town meeting will then and there act upon the following articles. Article 1.
Does any member object to waiving the reading of the articles? If not, Mrs. Neves will continue with the officer's return of service.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Worcester County, Milford, Massachusetts. date March 27, 2023. By virtue of this warrant, I have notified the legal voters of the town of Milford to meet at the times and places for the purposes within named as directed, and the warrant was posted on April 18, 2023. Mark Calzaloya, Constable of Milford. Thank you.
Okay. Just want to go over a few meeting instructions. As a reminder, town meeting members and registered voters in the town of Milford may speak at town meeting. Anyone else wishing to address this body needs the unanimous consent of the town meeting members. If you want to speak, you have to be recognized by the moderator to do so. Please, you can either stand in place and wave your hand and shout, exclaim, Mr. Moderator, and I will recognize you. And then anybody, we have one person or maybe two people participating remotely, they will use the hand icon, raise hand icon on the Zoom. When you come up here to address town meeting, please first state your name and your precinct number, or if you're an at-large member, and if you're a resident of the town, please state your name and address. The making of motions and the voting on motions is restricted to town meeting members. Any main motion and amendments to a motion need to be in writing, and there must be 2 copies provided, one to the town clerk and one to the moderator. There are time limits in debate. The sponsor, whether an individual or several, is allowed 10 minutes for a presentation. A 2/3 vote is needed to extend that presentation for another 10-minute period. A person addressing town meeting on a motion is allowed 5 minutes when they speak for the first time. Any subsequent statement or presentations by the same person shall not exceed 3 minutes, nor exceed 3 in number. And again, a 2/3 vote is needed to extend a person's speaking time in duration or number. A town meeting member may ask a question. However, questions must be addressed to the moderator and are limited to obtaining material information. Neither elected members nor members at large are obligated to answer a question. And again, a town meeting member cannot directly ask a question to another member. So at this time, we'll take up Article 1. Any reports? Mr. DeLuzio.
Reno DeLuzio, Precinct 7, Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee Chairman. Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I'm not going to spend my time summarizing the Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee's annual report that was mailed to you with the warrant. However, the committee has continued to make progress in 2 areas since the report was submitted. The Milford Town Meeting Study Member Survey 2023 is ready to be sent out once we receive authorization from individual town meeting members to use their email address for this purpose as advised by Town Council. The IT department sent email authorization request forms to all town meeting members who have their email address on file on May 18th. The committee will send email authorization request forms by U.S. mail to those who do not have their email address on file over the next couple of weeks. Please be on the lookout for these forms. We ask for your prompt response. The town meeting procedural guide draft was sent to 15 members, a select group of reviewers for comment on May 18th. The group is comprised of 8 town officials, 7 town meeting members, 4 of whom are new or recently re-elected, and 3 are experienced members. Now, I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to focus on the report's last topic, the Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee's future. The committee is now at an inflection point where it must decide over the coming months to continue or request you dissolve the committee. As noted in the report, town meeting member participation has not met expectations. In addition, 4 members' terms, including mine, will expire in 2024. No member of the committee has expressed a desire to be chair. Your participation can be as a voting committee member, a participating applicant, or a consultant volunteer, which does not require submitting an application. Application forms can be found on the town website under Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee. The committee's future and its initiatives, as cited in the report, rest entirely with you. Without more participation, it will not be able to continue. Keep in mind that this is the only committee established for your benefit. It is my hope that enough of you will respond to avoid dissolving the committee. I am sure your time and talents would be appreciated by your fellow town meeting members. I leave you with the following for now. Ask yourself if you value your committee's mission to improve town meeting. If you do, it is now time for you to participate. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuzio. Are there any other reports? Mr. Correa.
First of all, I'd like to request 4.5 extra minutes in case I need them.
Mr. Correa is asking for an additional 5 minutes, the total 15 minutes. Does any member object? Hearing no objection, you have 15 minutes.
Okay. First thing, I want to say thank you. Thank you to all the department heads here in Milford for the outstanding job they've done to protect our money. Secondly, thank you to this town meeting, because the direction keeps coming and keeps coming in the right direction, as you'll see when we go through the financials. This year, challenging year, just like last year. Our expenses overall, as you can see, go from 132 million, hard to believe 132 million. I've said it before, when I grew up, you could have bought Milford for 132 million. They would have thrown in Hopedale and Mendon. But we've gone from 132 to 142. That includes 6 to 7 incremental $1 million because of the students that we've added. The school has done everything they can to keep our expenses as tight as possible, but when you add 200 children, the expenses increase. So this year, we're proposing a total budget of $142,900,000. And the good news is, when we go to the next page gives you a breakdown. Anybody who's interested in details, this is your money. You've been elected to be the steward of the money we spend and the policies we implement. Feel free to give a call and we'll make all this information in detail available to you. There's no state secrets here. It's all open. But you can see the expenditures. Education looks 50%, but when you start looking at employee benefits and other related expenses, it's closer to 60. And we've been lucky that the state Chapter 70, which is their contribution, has gone up. I mean, Milford, thank you, Representative Murray, and to our Senator Roush. We went up $7 million in the year. Most towns around us were in the $100,000. So we owe a great debt of gratitude to our representatives. You can see mainly the assessments. Capital this year is going up to $2 million. Now, $2 million is never enough. We always count on free cash. Now, there's nothing free about cash. Free cash is just money that was budgeted but not spent. One question that always comes up is, why don't we have spending of the excess levy capacity? Because that's free money. Make sure you understand, excess levy is not free. For every $1 million, when we say we have saved $5 million off the levy capacity, It's $80 a million on your home taxes. So that's $400 that you're not getting charged. If you start spending that excess levy, it's just like spending any other money. It's $80 a million. As you see the revenue, our levy is $83 million. It went up 1%, 1 point something percent this year again. And that's something I feel comfortable and proud of. You know, by law, we can go up 2.5% with just your permission. We don't have to ask our taxpayers as long as we stay under 2.5. The fact that we can stay under, 1.5, really does help. I mean, we've got a lot of people who built Milford, who are living on Social Security. And when you start living on $15,000, $18,000 a year, every dollar counts. So only raising the levy spending by 1% is something to be proud of. Another thing to look at, obviously the room occupancy tax, thank God it's back. Those are visitors to the town. Any of you all that travel, you know when you go to another city, you pay for the hotel, then you pay for the city tax, the state tax, the dog tax, the cat tax, and it all adds up like in New York City to about 35 extra percent. Well, this is our little 6%. And if anybody says it doesn't mean anything, it's $1 million that we don't have to tax. So having that little hotel tax keeps $80 in everybody's pocket. And this year, for the first time, we got the water department revenue in there. I'm happy to say the water department is doing everything they promised. You know, it's rare that you hear, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, and they really are. Well, in this case, they are. When we go to the next page, you'll see the expenditures for the last 4 years. And education is gone from 56% to 48% and 50% this coming year. Again, that's because of the additional Chapter 70 money. When you throw $7 million in, we didn't have to match the $7 million. Now, when the good Dr. McIntyre first came with Chris Wilson and said, oh, we need an extra $6 million this year, I have to admit, it was hard to swallow until Representative Murray came back and said, yeah, but I'm giving you 7. So that covered us. And that's why you see some of the numbers going down. The current warrant, you'll see personnel contracts. When we don't close a contract, police, fire, sewer, in a year, we budget the salaries flat. And somebody will say, why do you do that? Because it's not good to go to a negotiation and say, Brownie, I've got 3% to spend. Let's talk about how much you're going to take from me. So we'll say we have 0, and we negotiate it. But that means that when the contract is closed, we have to come up with the money to backfill, to pay people retro. So that's why you'll see $600,000 in personnel contracts. That's money that was owed, that if they had gotten their raises and cost of living adjustments right up front, that would have been paid. Since they didn't, we have to add it in at the town meeting. Benefits, actually $500,000 isn't too bad when you look at the size of Milford, but it went up. Snow and ice. I love this kind of snow and ice. All that money fell right back into the general fund. Tonight, we'll talk about a study for a doggy park, and there's $5,000 in there to begin the study. That is just to begin thinking about possibly considering doing it. Don't think for a moment that you're going to get a park developed for $5,000. As we look, we have money going to the sewer project down at Fisk Mill. It's $2 million. Now that's being transferred from the stabilization account, but it's the sewer stabilization, their enterprise fund. So people out there, like me, who wish they had sewer in Milford but don't get charged for this because we're not using the service. This is only from the ratepayers. One open area, Benjamin Moore, years ago we went through, if any of you are as old as I am, you remember those beautiful colors behind stylons, the bright yellows, the bright reds. And they dried them and removed the pigment, which were full of heavy metals. We thought a few years ago that the DEP took us off the hook and said, okay, you've remediated it, it's done. Well, they have the right to come back and say, just kidding, we want a new study. And right now, the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe, has already spent $350,000. Our part of it's going to be $250,000. But again, I can pray that it ends there, but I can pray to be young, thin, and have hair. I probably have the same chance on either. The Youth Center, to finish the Youth Center project, once again, thank you, Brian, for the money from the state, because they've gotten an allocation, an earmark, that completes their project, that doesn't cost us directly. I mean, it still costs us because the money from the state came from our pockets. But directly, didn't cost us anything. And finally, we're being good neighbors to BVT. Over the years, Dr. Fitz has helped us out on projects by supplying the labor, and he needed $50,000 above his budget. The good news is he brought it to us the year that we're one of the lowest charged towns of the 13. So we're going to propose to spend $50,000 helping them with their grease traps. And candidly, do we have to? No. Can we? Yes. Should we? That's up to you. But this is a group that's helped us whenever we needed help. So $50,000 seemed like a reasonable request. The debt schedule. Well, obviously, the water company increased our debt schedule by a little bit. So if you look from 2021, the school was 65%. Now the school's gone way down as a percentage because the water company has gone up. The good news is the water company is keeping up with what they promised, and the finances look good. So I wanted to give you an idea that 70% of our debt is the water company, 20% of our debt is the school. The sewer, it's minimal, but they take care of it out of their enterprise fund. And the geriatric authority has $11 million on the books. By the time that's done, it could grow. Last thing, long-range plan. We have to be aware, and I got 2 minutes to go. We have to be aware of where we're exposed. The biggest exposure, and I know a lot of you make fun of me when I say there's a school coming, but keep in mind we have 5 major schools in Milford. School lasts 40 to 50 years before you have to do a major reno or a major build. The high school is probably, and this is total guess at this point, probably going to be next year before we're approved to start by the school building administration. We've tucked away $1.5 million for the feasibility study so that if the SBA came to us and said, can you get approval? Town meeting can just say, absolutely, we already have the money put away. But the cost, if we renovate it, will be somewhere between 150 and 180 million. Building a new school, if we could find a place, would be 300, 350. So again, keep in mind that if it's 175, and that's a guess, I'm probably wrong, but be close, it's $7 million a year in expense that we'll be adding to our budget. So when we say we got to be tight and squeeze, One of the big reasons is school's coming for $7 million. And then the Geriatric Authority, they're doing a yeoman's job bucking the trend. I think there was 3 private geriatric authorities left in Massachusetts, and we're one of the 3. But the money just keeps getting tighter and tighter. You see the numbers of people going up, everything getting better, and then all of a sudden, the agencies to staff increase their prices ridiculously. So that could be anywhere from $1.5 million to $2 million of exposure. So keep in mind, $80 a million, there's $9 million I've already brought out. Now the good news is Chris paid off some, or what do they call it, expired, bonds expired. Whatever way, we stopped paying them. So our debt service went down a little bit, and it'll go down again next year, as long as we do what we did last year, which is pay off some and not add any. So to finish, thank you. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you, Brian, for fighting to bring us money. And thank all the department heads, because that's the key to this, is to keep our spending under control.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. What's the pleasure of the meeting? Article 2? Article 2, please. Thank you.
Jim Legore, Personnel Board Chair. I move that the town vote to amend the wage and salary schedule of the wage and salary administration plan by establishing new position levels and salary levels as recommended by the Personnel Board for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 as follows.
Mr. Legore, is the wage and salary schedule in the motion exactly the same as appears in the warrant that was mailed to all town meeting members?
Yes, it is.
It is the same. Does any member object to waiving the reading of the wage and salary schedule for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard? Mr. Legore? Any? Okay. Any other vote care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 2. Excuse me, 3. Thank you. Mr. Walsh. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I move that the town vote to fix the salary and compensation of all elected officers of the town, as provided by Section 108, Chapter 41 of the General Laws as follows.
Mr. Walsh, are the salary and compensation figures in the motion exactly the same as appears in the warrant?
Yes, they are, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, they are the same. Does any member object to waiving the reading of the salary and compensation of all elected officers in the town? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
It would be favorable.
Recommendation is favorable from the Finance Committee. Any vote care to be heard? Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, this year the Select Board is recommending a 3% salary adjustment for full-time and part-time elected officials. The Select Board urges your support on this article. Thank you.
Does any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 4. Article 4. The budget. Who's doing the budget? Mr. Correa, does somebody have the motion? Do we have a motion in writing? No? Okay, we're going to, we need a motion to table then. Mr. Correa, can you do that, please?
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to table Article 4 until later in the meeting when we have the proper paperwork.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to table Article 4 until a motion is available. Motions have to be in writing in order to give the motion. So all those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, motion is carried. So Article 4 is tabled. Article 5. Mr. Mazzucchelli.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Mazzucchelli, Precinct 8 and Select Board Member. Article 5. I move that the town vote to enact certain measures as set forth herein, which are presented each year to the annual town meeting.
Mr. Mazzucchelli.
Yes, sir.
Are there certain measures of the motion exactly the same as appears in the warrant?
Yes, it is, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, they are the same. Does any member object to dispensing with the reading of the certain measures presented each year to the annual town meeting? Hearing no objection, motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
The Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Yes, Mr. Mazzucchelli.
Thank you. This article and this motion have been restructured by the Select Board at the recommendation of the Town Government Study Committee in an effort to save what has been perhaps unnecessary utilization of time at prior town meetings. This one article takes 7 items, which used to be separate articles each year at the annual town meeting, and which always comes forward in fashion to address matters which must be voted upon on an annual basis. Doing these as separate articles simply took unnecessary time, and the Select Board concurs with the Town Government Study Committee that it is a valid approach to do these as one vote. I will briefly explain the content of this motion. Item A allows short-term borrowing when necessary under the applicable provisions of the general laws. Item B is the annual vote which authorizes the Select Board to take charge of legal affairs. Item C allows for proper processing of parking violation monies. Item D authorizes the treasurer-collector to enter into what we refer to as compensating balance agreements with financial institutions if they deem such to be in the best interest of the town. Item E allows the amounts that are recovered from insurance companies on third parties for damage to town property, notwithstanding the amount to be spent directly to effectuate repairs to damaged property. Item F allows for contracting for up to 5 years instead of the limitation of 3 years, which would otherwise be in effect. This is necessary for simple agreements such as equipment leasing, copying machines, and such. In item G, the final item, authorizes the treasurer to speed the process of collection of taxes in instances where a taxpayer in arrears is willing to deed the property to the town rather than go through the cumbersome and somewhat expensive foreclosure process. I urge you to support this article. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzucchelli. Does any other voter care to be heard? Okay, the voters are reminded that the borrowing of money or issuing of notes under Measure A of the motion requires a two-thirds vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7. Since no one has spoken in opposition, we'll take a voice vote. If that is not unanimous, then we'll poll the individual precincts. So all those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 6. Thank you.
Chris Wilson, at-large School Committee Chair. Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I move that the town vote to authorize the expenditure of the available balance in Fund 2696 Comcast Verizon PEG Access under the jurisdiction of the School Committee for the purpose of performing upgrades in accordance with the PEG Access Agreement.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
We recommend favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Wilson.
Town meeting members, this article is a yearly vote that transfers approximately $60,000 of funds generated as a result of an agreement between the town and the PEG access provider. These funds are used to support the network infrastructure and audiovisual upgrades at the high school, which hosts Milford cable TV programming like school committee meetings and various high school events. I respectfully ask for your support in this article. Thank you.
Any other vote care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 7.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $1,598.18 from the excess and deficiency account, said sum being consistent with the funds raised from vending machines in the Milford School District, to be spent under the school committee for the purpose of student activities not funded in the school department budget.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard? Mr. Wilson.
Town meeting members, this article is a yearly vote that transfers the vending machine revenue to be used for various programs or student activities not covered within the operational budget. In the past, some programs include purchasing materials and supporting transportation for the academic decathlon, offsetting costs associated to display student artwork, support towards students against driving drunk, support towards CPR training for staff and students, support for transportation for college campus visits, and providing a donation for the After Prom organization. I respectfully ask for your support on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other vote care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 8.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your indulgence and allowing me to speak from here. I am undergoing some physical studies, one of them tomorrow, so I have to maintain a certain leverage each day. I thank you. I move that the town, the lighting here is horrible. One sec. There we go. No, it's okay. I move that the town transfer the sum of $525,000 $428 from the excess and deficiency account. Said sum to be utilized to fund the first 2 years of the Milford Police Department collective bargaining agreement, retroactive to July 1st, 2021.
Motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Yes, it's favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. O'Loughlin, Attorney O'Loughlin.
this article seeks to fund the cost of funding for the police contract between the Milford Police Association and the town of Milford, which we were back, so we're catching up at this point in time. The additional cost is $525,428. I urge your support of this article.
Thank you, Attorney O'Loughlin. Any other vote care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 9. Motion has been made and seconded to pass over Article 9. A motion to pass over is an attempt to take no action on an article inserted in the warrant. It is debatable. Does any voter care to be heard on the motion to pass over? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. That is to pass over Article 9. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 10. Mr. Long. Motion has been made and seconded that the town vote to pass over Article 10. The motion to pass over is an attempt to take no action on an article inserted in the warrant. It again is debatable. Does any voter care to be heard on the motion to pass over? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 11. Attorney Moody. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, Jerry Moody, Precinct 6. The Select Board asked me to present this article and the next one because I've got a significant history with it. It goes back really, what we'll talk about sort of stretches back to 2007, so I was significantly involved at that time, so it made sense to the Select Board to have me present to you on this one. If Chris George is here, can you put up the, there you go. This is the area that we're talking about, and it's Old Cedar Street, which runs behind Wendy's, and then behind the station, the gas station, and those other. And this is what was voted on in 2007. At that time, Goodyear Tire Service wanted to put a facility in there, and the selectmen then negotiated with them and presented to town meeting the concept of abandoning Old Cedar Street, which is a dead end and a cul-de-sac, and it's in the same condition it probably was when they built 495 many years ago and cut it all off and rebuilt Cedar Street. So at that time, town meeting voted to discontinue Old Cedar Street and also voted to lay out a right-of-way, which is roughly where you see it right there now as a proposed new right-of-way, which would be the new access to that back property, which would have then and would now allow development of that property. What was going to be laid out as a town, what would have been a town way, the town would have had responsibility for it. But that was 2007. As you might remember, 2008, the real estate market collapsed. Goodyear walked away from the whole thing. So we as a town never took any steps to finalize that discontinuance or that layout because we didn't really know what was going to happen. And now it's, what, some 16, 17 years later, and there's a proposal to put storage facilities on that property, and they're basically asking the same thing, to discontinue Old Cedar Street, but not actually to lay out a new town way, because what they're proposing, which makes more sense, which is going to be a subdivision road, so it'll be a private way. It'll always be a private way unless this body wants to accept, which we don't anticipate ever happening. It'll be a private way, full responsibility of the developers. This was important to the town engineer and to others because of a drainage system that's in there and other problems. They'll never be the town's problems. They'll be the private parties. So it would be a subdivision street now instead of laying out a public way. So that's the two articles. The first article you'll see is a very simple one. It just moves to rescind the vote under Article 21 of the May 21, 2007 annual town meeting. And that's the one that sought the relocation and alteration of Old Cedar Street. So just rescinding that clears the record, and again, the developer will come in. They may have already submitted it actually to the planning board for a subdivision approval, building up to the subdivision control and the planning board standards on that. The next article, which we'll talk about, will deal with Old Cedar Street. So again, this is one that it makes some sense. The Board of Selectmen thought the concept is a good one. It'll produce tax revenue for the town, some jobs, but more tax revenue. Probably less traffic than the Goodyear would have required because it's storage facilities, which is low level in terms of generation of traffic. So the concept is a good one under both of these articles. You may hear in the course of debate on this questions of whether or not there should be parking established for the bike trail, because this does, theoretically, Old Cedar Street does go to the bike trail. That's going to have to, that'll be handled, not here, but that'll be handled by the planning board. The planning board is the body that has discretionary authority to put conditions on their decision as to whether or not to grant a special permit for this use. So that's the point in time when those kinds of things will be considered. So it's not appropriate here to do any amendments or any changes to this motion to condition it. It's a vote to either rescind or not to rescind. In the next article, it'll be a vote either to discontinue or not to discontinue. You can't condition it, even though everybody may agree, including the developer, that they want to do something in terms of access to the bike trail and parking. So that's, with that background, I urge you on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to support this article.
Thank you, Attorney Moody. Any other voter care to be heard? Yes, the voter from Precinct 6. Mr. Crane.
John Crane, Precinct 6. One area that this map doesn't show is you have the Charles River just on one side. So you're looking at an area that on to the north or east has the bike path, and then you have the Charles River on the other side. And you have a nice wooded area right there. So we're looking at, instead of having a really nice wooded area with a water feature for warehouses. Just my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Any other voter care to be heard? Voter in Precinct 1, I believe.
Zachary Tolby Wright. I'm 23.5 Dilla Street. Just a question to the moderator. Is the intended use zoned for commercial purposes only?
Can somebody answer that? Mr. Attorney Moody, thank you.
Yeah, this property, of course, it's not zoned residential. It's zoned as industrial commercial under our zoning bylaw, and whatever use goes there will have to fall under, obviously, commercial or industrial.
Thank you, Attorney Moody. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion that the town vote to rescind its vote under Article 21 of the May 21st, 2007 annual town meeting, which vote sought the relocation and alteration of Old Cedar Street. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried. Article 12. Attorney Moody.
And Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, again, Jerry Moody, Precinct 6. I move that the town vote to rescind its vote under Article 22 of the May 21st, 2007 annual town meeting, which vote sought to discontinue as a public way certain portions of Old Cedar Street right-of-way and in lieu thereof to discontinue as a public way, and in accordance with Chapter 82, Section 21 of the General Laws, the entirety of Old Cedar Street right-of-way as shown on the discontinuance plan for Old Cedar Street in Milford, Mass. 01757, dated March 1st, 2023. The discontinuance plan on file with the town clerk, said access to be discontinued being more particularly identified on the discontinuance plan as Old Cedar Street to be discontinued, and being more particularly described as follows.
Attorney Moody.
Yes.
Is the legal description in the motion exactly the same as appears in the warrant?
Exactly the same, yes.
Okay, thank you. It's the same. Does any member object to dispensing with the reading of the legal description of the discontinuance plan for Old Cedar Street? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote okay to be heard?
Mr. Moderator.
Attorney Moody.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be brief. As I indicated, this is the second of the two articles that both dealt with the same concept. I guess the plan is not up there right now, but you saw it before that showed Old Cedar Street and its layout, which is probably a 1700s layout when it was the town of Mendon before Milford. And that all changed with 495 and the reconstruction of Cedar Street, so rendering this unnecessary for that typical travel purposes. And again, now if you recall the plan, whoops, the plan's back. The access to that property will now be in a subdivision layout, which will be similar to what's there for the proposed 50-foot right-of-way. But again, it'll be done in accordance with the Planning Board rules and regulations. That will be the frontage and the access for this property, because this property has no frontage on Cedar Street. Even though you see frontage there, it's under the federal no access, so they cannot access Cedar Street. The only way to access this property is from behind, either Old Cedar Street or the proposed right-of-way, which will be a subdivision way. So again, for the same reasons expressed before, the Select Board would urge you to support this article.
Thank you, Attorney Moody. Any other vote okay to be heard? Mr. Wheelock.
Jamie Wheelock, Cuniff Ave, Milford, Massachusetts. I have been paying attention to this project for 8 or 9 months and addressed the Select Board a couple of times on this subject. I requested some PowerPoint slides, and if they could come up, that would be awesome. Look at that. That's the picture of the existing situation. All that stuff, it's been long-term parking forever. It's not sanctioned as parking by the owners, but the relaxed atmosphere of the landlord has created long-term parking there. People park here all the time. The town blocked off Cedar Street right there decades ago. There's obstacles all along this road that prevent people from parking there, even though it's a town road. People who want to access the quarry land, people who want to access the Vietnam mountain bike land, people who want to do a lot of different things are prevented from using the town-owned land. Blocking it off all those decades ago has prevented the community to understand just how useful that land could have been all this time. So right now, we don't hold that land in a very high regard because it's hasn't been used. The next slide, please. That's the slide you've already seen. You can go back to that plan slide, please. Even though it looks like a cul-de-sac, it's almost certainly going to have curb cuts put in it and look pretty much exactly the way it does right now, with passing through what looks like a cul-de-sac, but it will probably get opened up. I don't have future vision to know what the developer's really going to do there, but it wouldn't surprise me if the old Cedar Street Road is paved and creates access to what he wants to do. Next slide, please. This is a plan that shows, and it's got some stuff obscuring the bottom portion of it. This includes a plan which, if you guys choose to not support this article, you could actually maintain a municipal street called Old Cedar Street and a municipal parking lot. It would probably actually go a teeny bit further in this direction right here. And next slide, please. That's a map of MassDOT park and ride commuter parking lots all around the state of Massachusetts, with a conspicuously large hole right there where Milford is. And that might be the last slide. Yeah, no, there's one more slide. So the mountain bike people use Vietnam all year long. Lots of mountain bikers park at the Wendy's without authorization from the landowner. Certain amount of commuters park at Wendy's. Commuters are currently parking at Louisa Lake parking lot during the morning as a commuter pickup spot and then carpooling to work. Even though that Louisa Lake parking lot has been expanded, there's been increased amenities provided there, so there will be actually increased pressure on Louisa Lake parking lot. And the bike path parking lot at the Hopkinton border is under extreme pressure. It fills up on the best days. So there is real need for more parking. The green line is the existing Upper Charles Trail that a lot of you people know. This solid blue line is land acquired when the town bought the water company. And this dotty thing there is what could be a path that would get people to Plains Park through Pine Grove Cemetery if we negotiated terms with the landowner. The paths are already there and are used informally. So obviously that's a long-term plan to turn the Charles Trail into a loop that goes to Clark Island. But if any of the idea of increasing the Upper Charles Trail and promoting a municipal parking lot for park and ride type activities, I'm not saying it's a state-sanctioned park and ride lot, but just a municipal lot that the town is controls, because the developer, as in the times that I've heard him, he has made casual pledges of 4 parking spaces.
Excuse me, Mr. Wheelock, you're going to have to wrap it up now.
All right, or I could ask for a few more minutes, like
you can ask,
Al Correa did before he even got started.
We certainly can do that. Does any member object to Mr. Wheelock? We have an objection. Therefore, we have to take a, hold on, we have to take a two-thirds vote. All those in favor of allowing Mr. Wheelock an additional few minutes, 3 minutes of time, please rise and remain standing until counted by the monitors. All those opposed to Mr. Wheelock having an additional 3 minutes may now stand and be counted by the monitors. Okay. Just, Attorney Wilton, I did not see how you voted. Can you please vote again? In favor? Okay, in favor, thank you. Precinct 1. 10 in
favor, 2 abstentions.
We don't count abstentions. Thank you. Precinct 2. 11 in favor, 3 opposed. Precinct 1 was 10 in favor, none opposed. Precinct 3. 4 in favor, 2 opposed. Precinct 3 was 4 in favor, 2 opposed? Okay. Precinct 4. 4 in favor, 4 opposed. Precinct 4, 4 in favor, 4 opposed. Precinct 5. 8 in favor, 3 opposed. Precinct 5, 8 in favor, 5 opposed. 3 opposed, excuse me. Precinct 6. Precinct 6, 10 in favor, 5 opposed. Precinct 7. 17 in favor, 1 opposed. Precinct 7, 17 in favor, 1 opposed. Precinct 8. 9 in favor, 2 opposed. Precinct 8, 9 in favor, 2 opposed. At large?
6 in favor, 6 opposed.
At large, 6 in favor, 6 opposed, and we had 1 remote in favor. I had 80 and 26. Let me do it again. 10, 11, plus 4, plus 17, plus 6, plus 1, plus. I have 80. You don't have the remote. Okay. All right. So we got that equals 106. 80 haven't voted in favor of extending it by 3 minutes, 26 opposed. The necessary 2/3 has been met. So, Mr. Wheelock, you have an additional 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for your willingness to hear me get to the end of my statement, which I am trying to speed through. Anyhow, the developer has informally pledged 4 trailhead parking spots. That's a woefully inadequate compensation for losing 1.39 acres of town-owned land. If you think your responsibility as town meeting members is to guarantee that the developer has the ability to build a 600-unit storage facility, you can support this article as is. But if you think the idea of developing the existing bike path into a loop trail that goes to Old Cedar Street all the way to Clark's Island, and also doing that path to Plains Park via the Pine Grove Cemetery, you might see the value in guaranteeing that there is ample municipal parking at Old Cedar Street and the developer can still build a very large self-storage facility. Missing out on this opportunity to benefit Milford's residents that participate in outdoor recreation or want to participate in carpool commuter parking lot options will seem short-sighted in the future. And if I could just come up with 1 or 2 more points that I tried to say. Basically, this project, this land which has been for sale for a very, very long time, allowing the planning board to fine-tune the negotiations about trail access and parking space allotments is probably not what the planning board is best suited to do. Also, the developer, yes, he has to conform to what the planning board wants, but the planning board, the previous planning board that looked at this plan 8 months ago, they weren't that interested in municipal parking either. And they definitely are not pressing for 50 parking spaces. I would like to press for 50 parking spaces and negotiate that down if it has to be. But there is room on this land to do much more than 600 units of self-storage. And the residents of Milford deserve a better bargain out of losing Old Cedar Street. It's really kind of discouraging to hear the highway surveyor talk about working his way out of managing one little road in Milford for the drainage problem, which, yes, it might be a problem, although I think the town of Milford is better resourced for maintaining that drainage problem than Wendy's ever was, and they were on board with dealing with their problems. But I hope you'll reject this plan so that the select board can more earnestly negotiate terms that reflect the interests of all of Milford residents, not the developer who wants to do 600 units of self-storage. And I'm not opposed to the storage plan. I just want a fair shake for Milford residents. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wheelock. Any other voter care to be heard? Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Visconti, town meeting precinct member from Precinct 8. None of the previous speakers have said a word about what effect this might have on traffic in the area, and that is because nobody knows. Town meeting members have not been presented with an engineered traffic impact study, but I can tell you this from my experience, and I have plenty of experience, and as you all know, experience is a brutal teacher, and I can tell you I have been brutalized more than most. Traffic is not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. Have the folks on Dilla Street not suffered enough trying to get to their homes? Have the early morning and late afternoon commuters not suffered enough sitting at the top of Dilla Street waiting to get out onto 85 or to get to 495? I think they have. This is a recipe for disaster. Until we have more information with respect to especially a traffic impact study, I would encourage you to vote no on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Visconti. Any other vote to be heard? Attorney Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to reiterate what I said before, this has to go before the Planning Board, which is a body that is especially suited to make the kinds of decisions that have to be made. A special permit has to be issued after notice to all abutters, and notice brought to that in publication, and then the standards in the zoning bylaw that apply to all special permits will apply. Traffic will be a consideration of that. Traffic will be a serious consideration of the Planning Board in the subdivision control decisions that have to be made. And that's where traffic studies can be done and questioned. It's not here. Here, folks, we have to vote yes or no on whether or not to discontinue Old Cedar Street. And it's important to keep in mind, this is not town-owned property. This is, as I said, a 1700s layout of the town of Minden, which obviously predecessor to Milford. It's not town-owned property. The town has a right-of-way for travel purposes. The feet of the land under there is still owned by the abutters. And so what happens in most instances like this, when you discontinue and you put that discontinuance on record, the fee interest goes back to where it always was, which is in the abutters. The town doesn't have a right just to force developers to establish parking, but developers typically want to work with the city or town for the kinds of access issues that are here. And these developers, as I understand it in my very limited dealings with them, are more than willing to do that and to work rationally with the Planning Board, which is the body that has to do that. You can't negotiate that kind of activity right here. We can't be a special permit granting authority and having hearing after hearing after hearing before town meeting. So again, if you're against it, fine, vote against it. But again, if you're in favor of letting it go to the next step, please vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Moody. Any other voter care to be heard? Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Crane, Precinct 6. I live up by the high school and have to go down Dill Street a lot. The traffic that comes out of Sumner Street with the tractor trailers creates a disaster on Dilla Street. And by you adding another entrance and adding more tractor trailers, it's going to just completely wreak havoc to the Dill Street traffic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Any other voter? Precinct 1.
Zachary Foley Wright, Precinct 1. I'd just like to echo the points that Mike and John had just made. Traffic is already abysmal in the area, and if you think it's going to be abated by Old Cedar Street being developed and creating a dangerous precedence for another adjacent street to connect Old Cedar Street to Dilla Street, that is definitely within the realm of possibilities. Thank you.
Any other voter care to be heard? Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Mike Visconti from Precinct 8, Town Meeting Member. Ladies and gentlemen, the planning board that the previous speaker spoke of and the entity that the previous speaker wants you to put your trust in, keep in mind, unanimously approved Wendy's at the corner of Diller and 85. And you see the traffic situation that created. If you want to rely and put all your marbles on the planning board, you go right ahead. I will not. Please vote no on this article.
Any other voter care to be heard? Mr. Calagione.
I really didn't want to get up and speak on this, but based on Mr. Visconti's comment, I just needed to. I've been on the board for over 20 years. Wendy's was done a lot longer than that. I wasn't even on the board when it was approved. The traffic there at that point in time was certainly not what it is now. There's no looking at that and having any connotation with what's being put in front of us here. As Mr. Moody has indicated, if there is a plan that has come forward to the board, we have not acted on it. We haven't had any public hearings on it as of yet. Obviously, this would need to be passed before we could do that. Traffic would certainly be a condition of anything that we approved at that location, but I need to laugh when I hear somebody wanting to put in 50 parking spots for a bike trail, and they don't worry about the parking and what the impact on traffic is going to be with that, but they're worried about other impacts. I don't understand it, because if you look at, and I'm a civil engineer, if you look at the traffic impacts from a bike trail where you're having people come in for an hour and a half and circulating through is much higher than what you'll get for what the developer is trying to do here. So I don't think that that's an issue, but again, that's an issue that needs to go before the planning board and discuss. What this is for is to allow the developer to look at what they could possibly develop and for the town to get some additional tax dollars from this location. I urge you to pass this.
Thank you, Mr. Calagione. Any other voter care to be heard? Okay, if not, the question comes upon the motion as presented, and that is to rescind the vote under the Article 22 of the May 21, 2007 Annual Town Meeting. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Motion is carried. Mr. Rhodes doubts the vote. I need 6 other people. Mr. Visconti doubts the vote. Hold on 1 second. Who else doubts the vote? Please stand. And Mr. Crane. The vote, was that Buckley? Okay. Please state in the voter in precinct. Probert. And the voter in precinct 1 right there. What is your name, ma'am? Ma'am, what is your name? Okay, Rasmussen. And yours, sir? Zachary. I'm sorry, what was the last name? I can't hear it. Colby. Okay. All right, so that's 7 voters. All those in favor? That's 8, actually. All those in favor of the motion that the town vote to rescind its vote under Article 22 of the May 21st, 2007 Annual Town Meeting will rise and remain standing until counted by the monitors. All those opposed will rise and remain standing until counted by the monitors. Okay. Precinct 1. Precinct 1, 7 in favor, 6 opposed. Precinct 2. Precinct 2, 7 in favor, 6 opposed. Precinct 3. Precinct 3, 7 in favor, 2 opposed. Precinct 4. Precinct 4, 6 in favor, 2 opposed. Precinct 5.
7 in favor, 7 opposed.
Precinct 5, 7 in favor, 7 opposed. Precinct 6.
12 in favor, 3 opposed.
Precinct 6, 12 in favor, 3 opposed. Precinct 7.
10 in favor, 7 opposed.
Precinct 7, 10 in favor, 7 opposed. Precinct 8.
5 in favor, 4 opposed.
Precinct 8, 5 in favor, 4 opposed. At large.
12 in favor, 0 opposed.
At large, 12 in favor, 0 opposed. And the remote is 1 in favor. What do you got, 67? 74? Just do that one. That's 21 there. 13 plus 74, yep, and 37. 74 having voted in favor, 37 opposed. The motion is carried. Attorney Murray. Oh, I need a motion to take from the table. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to take Article 4, remove Article 4 from the table. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried. Mr. Correa. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate and transfer where indicated the amount of $142,940,173, $142,940,173, as itemized in the report of the Finance Committee, as may be necessary to defray expenses for the financial year beginning July 1st, 2023, and that the amounts of money set forth in the printed report of the Finance Committee be appropriated and transferred where indicated. For several purposes therein itemized, each numbered item being considered as a separate appropriation, and the same be expended only for such purposes.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded that the town vote to raise and appropriate and transfer when indicated the amount of $142,940,173 as itemized in the report of the Finance Committee, as may be necessary to defray expenses for the fiscal year, for the financial year beginning July 1st, 2023, and that the amounts of money set forth in the printed report of the Finance Committee be appropriated and transferred where indicated for the several purposes therein itemized, each numbered item being considered as a separate appropriation, and that the same be expended only for such purposes. So at this time, I'll ask any town meeting member who wishes to discuss or amend an item in the Finance Committee report that they rise to be recognized and give me that item number. We can discuss or amend it. Any member? If not, then the motion, question comes upon the motion as presented, and that is to appropriate the amount of $142,940,173. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 13.
Hi, Paul Mazzucchelli, Precinct 8 Select Board Member, Article 13. I move that the town vote to grant the Select Board the authority to research, develop, and participate in contract or contracts to aggregate the electricity load of residents and businesses in the town of Milford and for other related services independently or in joint action with other municipalities, retaining the right of individual residents and businesses to opt out of the aggregation.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Mazzucchelli.
This article seeks to grant the Select Board the authority to participate in a plan in contract to aggregate the electricity load of Milford residents and businesses. The goal of the plan will be to provide more competitive electricity choices, longer-term, stable electricity rates, and potentially lower electricity rates. Residents and small businesses are automatically enrolled in the plan unless they opt out. Once enrolled, participants can opt out of the plan without penalty or termination fees. Even after opting out, participants can opt back into the plan. Budget building and discount programs are available to participants under the plan. There is no cost to the town to set up or participate in the plan. I'd like just to elaborate just a little bit more on this so you'll all understand it a little better. The Select Board decided to entertain this plan because we've been getting, concerns from residents that were frustrated and concerned with their electricity rates skyrocketing throughout the past several months. So with our research, we found out that municipal aggregation programs were first introduced in 1997 with the state deregulation of electric grid. Municipal aggregation allows cities and towns to buy energy on behalf of the residents, using the combined buying power to negotiate better deals. By grouping together an entire town or multiple towns, which we can do, local governments will be in a much better position to negotiate lower prices. With energy rates climbing, more communities are looking at electricity aggregation to save residents money. Presently, there are approximately 178 municipalities in our state that already have this program. And how to create such a program? There's 4 steps that we have to go through. The first step is what we're doing tonight, to vote to initiate the municipal aggregation program. Hopefully we can get this passed. And if we do, we prepare a municipal aggregation plan in consultation with the Department of Energy Resources and in partnership with the consultant, which we have, which is Good Energies. We allow an opportunity for citizen review of the municipal aggregation plan, and then after that, we submit that plan. If it's approved and all the comments and conditions are made by the citizen review, we submit that aggregation plan to the DPU for review and approval. It will take some time. Hopefully by the next heating season, we would have this in place, hopefully. But as previously mentioned, there is no cost to the town to set up or participate in this plan, and I urge your support for this article. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzucchelli. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried. Article 14. Attorney O'Loughlin.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $10,900 from the excess and deficiency account. Said sum to be utilized to fund the Finance Director Personal Services contract.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Attorney O'Loughlin.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. The town entered into a new 5-year contract with the Finance Director. This article seeks the sum of $10,900 to fund the new contract. I urge your support of this article.
Thank you, Attorney O'Loughlin. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 15. Mr. Pillow. Thank you.
Christopher Pilla, Town Treasurer, at-large member. I move that the town vote to authorize the treasurer to withdraw $2 million from the sewer stabilization account 83500 for the purpose of utilization to offset partial borrowing for the Field Pond project.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard? Mr. Pilla.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the May 2022 annual town meeting, we voted to approve Article 12, which authorized the town to borrow $4.4 million for the Field Pond Sewer project. Since that time, the markets have been volatile and the borrowing rates are extremely high. This article seeks a stabilization transfer to offset some of the borrowing costs. Once we've expended the $2 million, we will revisit the remaining cost of the project as well as the current market conditions to see what a suitable path is. At that time, we will also decide what our best financing options are. Once we finalize that plan, we will come back to town meeting and withdraw any authorized borrowing amount at that time. I encourage your support on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pilla. Does any other voter care to be heard? Okay, if not, the voters are reminded that an appropriation from a stabilization fund requires a 2/3 vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B. Since no one has spoken in opposition, I will take a voice vote. If that is not unanimous, then we will poll the individual precincts. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 16. Mr. Walsh. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $7,376 from the Essex and Deficiency account, said sum to be utilized to fund the town administrator personnel services contract.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the town entered into a new 3-year contract with the town administrator. This article seeks the sum of $7,376 to fund the new contract for the town administrator. The Select Board urges your support on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Does any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 17, Mr. Calagione. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaw relating to the zoning map and to the Water Resource Protection District map as follows.
Mr. Calagione, is the text of the amendments in the motion exactly the same as appears in the warrant?
It is, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, they're the same. Does any member object to dispensing with the reading of the amendments to the zoning bylaw relating to the zoning map and to the Water Resource Protection District map? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote okay to be heard? Mr. Calagione.
Planning Board report, Mr. Moderator.
Sorry about that. You're correct. Does the Planning Board have a report?
Yes.
Thank you.
Pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Milford Planning Board on May 2nd, 2023, remotely conducted a duly posted and noticed public hearing regarding the subject of Article 17, at which time the Planning Board voted unanimously to make a favorable recommendation to town meeting. Article 17 is the application of the Planning Board to update Section 2.1 and 7.4 of the zoning bylaw relating to the Water Resource Protection Overlay District and map to comply with DEP requirements. Therefore, the Planning Board recommends Article 17 be adopted as printed in the warrant.
Does any other vote? Yes, Mr. Calagione.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Water Resource Protection District was first enacted as an overlay zoning district at the June 8, 1992 town meeting. However, Mass DEP has recently notified the town that the installation of the new Godfrey Brook wells requires Milford to update the Water Resource Protection District to remain in compliance with the DEP wellhead protection standards. This requires amendments to both the zoning bylaw text and to the Water Resource Protection Overlay District map. To this end, town staff have developed Article 17 to satisfy the Mass DEP requirements. Although DEP has updated the recharge areas for the new wells, this translates into only slightly larger Water Resource-1 overlay zone coverage and the current map WR1 overlay zone, and then only in limited areas. And if those town meeting members may have seen the maps on the way in, the largest area is by Cedar Street in the area of Florence Streets in those that remember the old Rosenfeld property on the other side of Cedar Street from there. Those areas would now be in the Water Resource Protection District due to the updating of the Godfrey Brook wells in a larger resource zone. So we went through that. The other areas that are shown on the map were really cleanup areas from previously where it was very difficult to see exactly where the lines were. We've gone through and tried to define those areas much clearer. So you see some areas that may have been slightly bigger that have been put into the Water Resource District. But the main area in terms of actual area that would be protected is in that area of residential houses near the St. Mary's Cemetery and across the street from the old Rosenfeld property. I urge your support for this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calagione. Does any other voter care to be heard? Okay, if not, I'm going to remind the voters that amending the zoning bylaw requires a 2/3 vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5. Since no one has spoken in opposition, we'll take a voice vote. If that is not unanimous, then we'll poll the individual precincts. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 18. Mr. Pillar.
Christopher Pillar, Town Treasurer, at-large member. I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $55,000 from the excess and deficiency account, said sum to be utilized to offset the deficit in the tax title account for the current fiscal year.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. Pillar.
Ladies and gentlemen, this article seeks a transfer of $55,000 to cover the deficit in the tax title account. In the past, we have budgeted a sum of $25,000, which usually has been sufficient. However, this fiscal year, we've exceeded this budget. In the beginning of the fiscal year, we lost our town council, who had been handling a lot of the cases in-house. Due to that loss, we were forced to use an outside firm to continue the process in land court. All these costs will be recovered once we go to sell the properties or sell the existing lots. We also are currently in the process of demoing a house in town that needs to be torn down, and those costs also will be recovered when we go to sell the lot. I ask for your support on this article.
Thank you, Mr. Pillar. Does any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 19.
Noel Bontempo, Precinct 7, and the Conservation Commission. I move that the town vote to amend Article 33 of the general bylaws relating to wetlands administration as follows.
Attorney Bontempo, is the
Yes.
text of the amendments in the motion exactly the same as printed in the warrant?
It is, Mr. Moderator.
It is the same. Does any member object to dispensing with the reading of the amendments to Article 33 of the general bylaws relating to wetlands administration? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard? Attorney Bontempo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The purpose of the amendment to the existing bylaw is to enhance wetland protection by requiring a minimum buffer to wetland resources in which structures can be constructed. That would be the addition of a 25-foot restriction. This change will add the required setback to the town wetland bylaw. This is consistent with municipal regulations in surrounding communities, making developers and designers better aware of the requirement. In addition, there is change to Section 4 with notice requirements for abutting landowners within 100 feet of the subject property if there is a notice of intent filed. I ask you for your support on this article.
Thank you, Attorney Bontempo. Does any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 20. Mr. Attorney Villani. Motion's been made and seconded to pass over Article 20. Motion to pass over is an attempt to take no action on an article inserted in the warrant. It is debatable. Does any voter care to be heard on the motion to pass over Article 20? If not, the question comes upon the motion to pass over Article 20. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 21. Mr. DeLuzio.
Mr. Moderator, Reno DeLuzio, Precinct 7, Chairman of the Milford Upper Charles Trail Committee. I move that the town vote to amend Article 34 of the Town of Milford General Bylaws regulating the use of Town of Milford bicycle paths, trails, and associated areas to allow the use of electric bicycles, e-bikes, and electric tricycles on bicycle paths in the Town of Milford, and such other modifications to Article 34, including the deletion of references on rail trails, adding a helmet requirement for persons 16 years of age or younger, and adding a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit for bicycles and authorized vehicles, and amendments to be as follows.
Mr. DeLuzio, is the text of the amendments in the motion exactly the same as printed in the warrant?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it is the same. Does any member object to dispensing with the reading of the amendments to Article 34 of the general bylaws regulating the use of bicycle paths, trails, and associated areas? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
It's favorable without significant input from the committee.
Okay. Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. DeLuzio? Hold on, Mr. Rasmussen. I got to allow Mr. DeLuzio to give his presentation. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. At the request of the Friends of the Milford Upper Charles Trail, a 501c3 organization, the Milford Upper Charles Trail Committee agreed to investigate allowing the use of electric bicycles, commonly referred to e-bikes. The committee investigation found the following. In November 2022, Massachusetts enacted legislation which defined Class 1 and Class 2 electric bicycles, established regulations, and allowed their use on bicycle paths. The legislation went into effect in January 2023. Currently, Milford's General Bylaw Article 34, as adopted in 2006, is silent regarding e-bikes. However, Article 34 prohibits motor vehicles of any kind, which would include e-bikes. The only exceptions are motor vehicles that assist persons with disabilities, maintenance, and emergency vehicles. The legislation also required a public hearing to regulate e-bikes on bike paths and trails. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 85, Section 11B and 3/4, the committee conducted a duly noticed public hearing on May 9th. The public hearing report was filed with the town clerk. For those who may not be familiar with Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes, a Class 1 e-bike is a pedal bicycle assisted with a motor only when pedaling. A Class 2 e-bike is a pedal bicycle assisted with a motor with or without pedaling. The motor stops assisting at 20 miles per hour for both classes. The use of e-bikes has grown rapidly over the last 5 years. Of the 44 states providing information, 30 states, or 68%, allow the use of e-bikes on trails, and 14 states, 32%, do not. The Holliston Upper Charles Trail, which is connected to the Milford Upper Charles Trail, allows the use of e-bikes. E-bikes have also been observed on the Milford Upper Charles Trail. E-bikes appeal to many types of people. Those who use them to overcome limited physical fitness, bikers who want to extend their range, people running everyday errands who want to carry heavier loads, and parents transporting children. It should also be noted that the Milford Upper Charles Trail has 2 areas where e-bikes would be helpful. One is behind the Water Department, where there is a slope leading to the I-495 off-ramp and a slope leading to Louisa Lake. The other area is the slope leading to Veterans Memorial Drive from Hayward Street. However, there's no denying that we are proposing to add a new element to the bike trail that comes with some safety concerns. I met with a deputy police chief who was representing the department. The police department would prefer e-bikes not be allowed on the bike trail. He cited, difficult to enforce because one cannot distinguish Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 manufacturers' labels at a distance. Bikers will alter their bikes for increased speed, but will not change the label as required by statute. Easier to exceed the speed limit for a sustained period, and enforcement takes personnel away for more important duties. I don't take issue with any of these concerns. I can only offer the following perspective. Enforcement should be for e-bikes exceeding the speed limit or for reckless behavior, not for the type of bike one is riding. For example, if a driver is stopped on a public way, hopefully is not for the type of vehicle you're driving, it is because one is exceeding the speed limit or for reckless driving. I submit that if e-bikes remain prohibited, police resources could be requested every time an e-bike is observed on the trail, even if the motor is turned off. There could be far more calls than for the occasional e-biker that is observed exceeding the speed limit or reckless behavior. In accordance with our bylaw, e-bikers would be subject to a fine of $100 for the first offense and $200 for each subsequent offense, and may be arrested and kept in custody just because they are on an e-bike. The town of Holliston has 4 years' experience with e-bikes on their segment of the Upper Charles Trail. The Holliston police chief reported that e-bikes have not been an issue over this time period. From the Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition, Mass Bike, at a hearing hosted by the Department of Conservation and Recreation in Brighton, a question asked attendees was, who can go faster than 20 miles per hour just under lake power? Everyone raised their hand. Mass Bike does not support the belief that electric bicycles will induce more reckless riders than standard bicycles do, and according to Mass Bike, and I quote, "We have seen no empirical data or studies to suggest otherwise." Allowing the use of e-bikes is supported by the Milford Park Commission, the Planning Board, the Friends of the Milford Upper Charles Trail, the Milford Upper Charles Trail Committee, and the Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition, Mass Bike. Finally, 16 years of experience with the Milford Upper Charles Trail has demonstrated that most bikers follow the rules of the road. There is no reason to expect the use of e-bikes will significantly change this behavior. I would add that if Article 21 is passed, the trail's rule signs would need to be changed and additional speed limit signs will be required. Other modifications to Milford Bylaw Article 34. Article 34 has not been amended since its enactment in 2006, so the committee took this opportunity to propose other modifications. For example, although posted on the Milford Upper Charles Trail rule signs since 2007, the helmet requirement and speed limit were never added to Article 34. The rail trail definition is not required because Article 34 regulations apply to any bicycle path, whether or not it's constructed over an abandoned railroad right-of-way. In conclusion, allowing the use of e-bikes on the Milford Upper Charles Trail will provide more opportunity for utilization of this important, well-regulated off-road transportation and recreation corridor. This proposed amendment could also be would be consistent with the Holliston Upper Charles Trail segment. I urge you to vote favorably for the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuzio. Does any other voter care to be heard? Mr. Rasmussen.
As far as I can see, there's no prohibition for electrically assisted biking on the trail right now, and I don't see that there's any reason to put more regulations which cannot be enforced, like helmets, for example. I recommend that we vote against it because it's over-regulating stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion, which is to amend Article 34. Oh, I apologize. Attorney Wilton, thank you. Hold on one second, Attorney Wilton. We have, okay, try again.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Lauren Wilton, Precinct 5. Making an exception for e-bikes to the existing ban on motorized vehicles will increase disabled access, and a speed limit will address the safety concerns regardless of bike class. So I urge your support for this article. I personally know people who have had respiratory issues, lung transplants, who would not be able to utilize this valuable resource without using an e-bike.
Thank you, Attorney Wilton. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion, which is to amend Article 34 of the town general bylaws of the town, regulating the use of bicycle paths, trails, and associated areas. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Motion is carried. Article 22. Mr. Pella.
Christopher Pilla, Town Treasurer, Blackstone Valley Regional School District Treasurer. I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $50,000 from the excess and deficiency account, said sum to be utilized by the Blackstone Valley Vocational Regional School District for the purpose of undertaking activities necessary for capital projects for the regional school district.
Motion has been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. Pilla.
Ladies and gentlemen, this request responds to special assistance for our vocational technical system, BVT. This article helps to fund extraordinary repairs to the school's 60-year-old culinary arts kitchen area, including safety designed grease traps. Some of the repairs will be made this summer with the assistance of student workers. Comparison quotes were provided to the Finance Committee to set cost parameters, and members of the committee personally visited the area. This project is one of many needed fixes for the school. BVT has also reached out to other communities for available funds such as ARPA and ESSER, and were granted those funds. I encourage your support on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pillar. Does any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried. Article 23. Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to pass over Article 23. Again, a motion to pass over is an attempt to take no action on an article inserted in the warrant. It is debatable. Does any voter care to be heard on the motion to pass over Article 23? If not, question comes upon the motion to pass over. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 24. Attorney Villani. Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to pass over Article 24. Again, it is debatable. Any voter care to be heard on the motion to pass over Article 24? If not, the question comes upon the motion to pass over Article 24. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 25. Mr. Long.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, Brian Long, town meeting member, Precinct 5, and alternate personnel board member. I move that the town vote to amend the personnel bylaws by striking section 3.10 and replacing it with a new section 3.10 as follows. The starting rate for new hires shall be the minimum of the rate range for the position as classified. In some cases, upon the recommendation of the appointing authority, the department head, and the personnel board, the new hire may start at a higher rate than the minimum, but not in excess of the maximum. Grade changes will only occur with a change of scope to the existing position, and appropriate documentation must be submitted by the department head to the appointing authority and must receive approval by town meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Personnel Board last year presented to you a change to the compensation schedule, which was approved at the May annual town meeting. Upon that being changed, we did look at bylaws and to make sure that they were consistent with the new schedule. We found that this one was not. And decided to make a change. Initially, we were going to completely remove section 3.10, but then decided after consultation with the town HR director to adjust the wording as what you have in front of you. I urge your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 26, Town Council Murray.
I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $220,000 from the excess and deficiency account, said sum to be utilized with funds previously appropriated to be spent under the jurisdiction of the Select Board for engineering, consulting, and legal expenses in relation to the cleanup of environmental hazard on town property off the Charles River Trail behind property of Benjamin Moore Company and Sumner Realty Trust.
Motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard?
Mr. Moderator.
Attorney Murray.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an issue that's gone back to 2007 when contamination was discovered behind Benjamin Moore off of the bike trail in the Cedar Pond area. For a number of years, the town worked along with the Army Corps of Engineers and Benjamin Moore to remove certain segments of the contamination. Work continued on behalf of the town till about 2015, and then at that point, some deadlines were missed in terms of continued work that needed to be done. We are presently now working with DEP to rectify the contamination, and this funding will provide what is called a comprehensive site assessment to be submitted to DEP by August of 2024. This report will document the exploration program, groundwater sampling, human health and ecological risk assessments. It will provide conclusions regarding the nature, extent, and potential impacts of the release, the risk of harm to human health, safety, public welfare, and the environment, and eventual continued remedial action. So this is in accordance with the consent decree that we have with DEP and is another step in the process to clean up this contamination. So I'd ask for your approval.
Thank you, Attorney Murray. Any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 27. Mr. Rickard.
Good evening, Brendan Rickert, Precinct 6. I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $5,000 from the excess and deficiency account, said sum of money to be spent under the jurisdiction of the Select Board for purposes of planning and other activity necessary to the establishment of a dog park in Milford, and further to authorize said board to apply for, receive, and expend any available grant funds that may be available and necessary for an establishment of such a dog park.
Motion has been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable with the noted recommendations in our committee's report.
Thank you. The recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. Rickert.
Thank you. I would like to express my appreciation for your attention to this article. It is important to clarify both the purpose and limitations of this proposal. To begin with, I am pleased to inform you that the Parks Commission unanimously endorsed this article last week and supports it tonight. Finance Committee has also voted favorably on this article. The proposed allocations of funds for the initial architectural work is an essential step towards securing the necessary resources for the dog park project. By obtaining by containing a conceptual design, we can demonstrate our commitment and vision to potential grant providers, increasing our chances of receiving funds for the subsequent phases of the project. It's important to note that what this article does not entail. This proposal does not guarantee the construction of a dog park or the availability of the full project funding. The funds requested solely cover the cost of the services for an architect for conceptual design, which serve as a critical tool for securing future grants. The subsequent phases of the project, including construction and additional funding, will require separate considerations and approval. Those next phases will go through the Parks Commission, including the location and scope of the park. Thank you for considering this article tonight, and I hope that you are in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rickert. Does any other voter care to be heard?
I think it's, Zach Trolby Wright, Precinct 1. I think it's worth pointing out to the voters here that the grant money, the $225,000 from the Stanton Foundation, is set to expire if we don't strike while the iron is hot. then money expires and we don't get to use it. So,
Thank you. Any other vote? Mr. Consigli.
David Consigli, town meeting member at large. This is, you know, we love our pets dearly, and I'm certainly a dog lover. Just give me some information concerning, is this under the going to be under the jurisdiction of the Parks Department? If that is the case, then are we utilizing, are we looking at some town-owned land we already have, or this is just really broad, and if someone could just give us an update of, you know, what they're thinking, that would be pretty helpful. I think it's a no-brainer that we try to go down this road. Many towns do have this. It's done safely. I know I can't be on town fields with a dog, and we can't be in certain town parks with a dog. So for dog owners and pet owners, this is probably a long time coming. Some may love it, some may hate it, but at least we have some information that we can make an educated decision on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Consigli. Mr. Rickert.
Thank you for that question. I just want to be very clear on this. The Parks Commission does own this project ultimately. No locations have been decided. That will go through them, through public debate, through open meeting as any other process. I would defer that question entirely to them, but they haven't crossed that path. This is just simply allocating the funds to move forward to the next step. Without these funds, as Zach pointed out, this will expire for the town to take advantage of this funding by the end of the year. So there are some time constraints to get the majority of this project paid for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rickert. Attorney Wilton.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to, Lauren Wilton, Precinct 5, and I'm a member of the Ad Hoc Dog Park Committee. I just wanted to point out that the purpose of the feasibility study is to see if it's feasible to invest in the dog park. So details at this stage would be premature. This article, I also just want to say, has public support. It was suggested by the Ad Hoc Dog Park Committee. The article was drafted by Town Council at the direction of the Select Board with a favorable vote by both the Finance Committee and the Parks Department. We will lose significant grant money, up to $225,000 if we don't act today. And we did just pass a $142 million budget with little or no discussion. So a $5,000 feasibility study is not an unreasonable request, and I urge your support.
Thank you, Attorney Wilton. Any other voter care to be heard? No. If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried. Article 28. Mr. Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Brown, Town Accountant, Member at Large. I move that the town vote to close out certain special article accounts to the general funds of the town as follows.
Mr. Brown, are the details of the closeouts the same as printed in the Finance Committee report?
Yes, they are, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, they are. Does any member object to waiving the details to close out certain special accounts to the general funds of the town? Hearing no objection, the motion is made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any voter care to be heard? Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the projects associated with these articles have been completed and closed out. The remaining balances will be transferred to the general fund totaling $102,944.92. I urge your support.
Does any other voter care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously. Article 29.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Brown.
I move that the town vote to transfer funds between certain line items voted under Article 4 of the May 23, 2022 annual town meeting for the purpose of making funds available in line item accounts not sufficiently funded through the end of the fiscal year 2023 as follows.
Mr. Brown, are the details of the transfers of funds between certain line items the same as printed in the Finance Committee's report that was mailed to all town meeting members?
Yes, they are, Mr. Moderator.
They are the same. Does any member object to waiving the reading of the transfers between certain line items voted under Article 4 of the May 23, 2022 annual town meeting? Hearing no objection, motion's been made and seconded. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Favorable.
Finance Committee recommendation is favorable. Any vote care to be heard? Mr. Brown.
Mr. Moderator, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this article is presented every town meeting for the purpose of transferring funds between line items of each budget with no additional expense to the town. It's basically an accounting cleanup at the end of the fiscal year. I urge your support.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other vote care to be heard? If not, the question comes upon the motion as presented. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.
Thank you.
Motion is carried unanimously. What is the pleasure of the meeting? Do we have a motion to dissolve? Mr. Calagione has made a motion to dissolve the warrant. All those in favor will manifest by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is carried unanimously, and the May 22nd, 2023 annual town meeting is hereby dissolved. The monitors are asked to bring forward their second attendance lists. Thank you.